All right. It's Brian Christensen. I'm going to talk about the shoulder a little bit. Description: shoulder has the greatest possible positions and ranges of motion of any joint in the body, relies predominantly on soft tissue for support and overall joint health, and as such is also an increased risk of injury due to susceptibility to overuse of its static and dynamic stabilizers. The shoulder kind of floats there, if you will. It doesn't have any like bone on bone structural support, so it relies, like I said, specifically on soft tissue. And you can see how this can be problematic, especially as widely used as the shoulder is. So it's bony anatomy. It's got the humerus. It's the largest, longest bone in the upper extremity, clavicle, and the scapula. The scapula is kind of often overlooked. We can't see it in a mirror, so it's overlooked in that it's part of the shoulder in itself, and also we kind of neglect it in regards to any type of weightlifting or weight training. Also, any type of flexibility, mobility type of work, scapular or anything posteriorly is generally overlooked, and this leads to some of the things I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. All right, some of our static stabilizers. We've got the labrum, which is also one of your greater shoulder injuries. You get a lot of labrum tears. The capsule, which is the space around the humeral head, and that's what allows for the shoulder to move in all of its various ranges of motion. And then, of course, the ligaments that help to stabilize it. All right, our dynamic stabilizers, the biggest one being the rotator cuff muscles. It's a steering mechanism for the humeral head. We have the supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis kind of in that order from top to bottom. These are the ones that I talked about where, we kind of neglect strengthening them, mobilizing them, stabilizing them, etc. We can't see them. We don't really realize that. We don't really realize what their use is. And if that goes as us as professionals, it greatly goes for the athletes. Athletes are all about anything you can see in a mirror. That's what looks good, so that's what they focus on. Neglecting these little guys is what can potentially lead them to some issues later on. And then moving down, we've got the deltoid, and then we've got the scapular stabilizers. All right, so shoulder susceptibility to injury. The vast majority of us, and we probably did it doing this PowerPoint presentation and probably recording it. In fact, I'm doing it right now, so I'm going to fix myself. But so the majority of the population sits at desks, hunched over computers, which leads to a great risk of shoulder injuries. We don't realize this while we're doing it, but we're perpetuating a cycle of tight front muscles and our anterior muscles and stretched out weak posterior muscles. Obviously, we're college students, so this is even more prevalent in regards to our kind of immediate population for athletic training. College students are also college athletes, and we like to think that they're doing homework a lot, so they're sitting in this hunched over position a lot. So this leads to a variety of functional difficulties to what should be a very mobile joint. So one of the functional difficulties is that severe internal rotation I was talking about. We get a shortening, tightening of the pectoral major, which internally, and that muscle is what internally rotates the humerus. As such, as like I said, shortening and tightening any anterior muscles is going to lengthen and weaken our posterior muscles, or more importantly, the scapular muscles. So some potential injuries, sitting hunched over like this, internally rotated, could eventually lead to a shoulder impingement due to the fact that the shoulder capsule is constantly compressed anteriorly and closing off the movable space around the humeral head. This impingement could lead to compression of the brachial plexus, which could cause kind of some nerve issues farther down the arm, down to the elbow, or even all the way down to the fingers. So this is something that we wanted to obviously try to prevent. And on top of that, there's a variety of tendonitis possibilities. The biceps tendon and all 4 rotator cuff tendons. A lot of people end up with shoulder injuries, or they feel some kind of precise pain in their anterior delt, and a lot of it never even stems from the delt itself. It comes from either our rotator cuff muscles or even our biceps tendon, or combination of the shortening or lengthening of some of these muscles kind of leads to a lot of overuse, since we're not using our shoulder to its full capabilities. How does this affect an athlete? Shoulder impingement and tendonitis greatly impacts the overall shoulder health and ability to play any sport involving repeated shoulder motions, i.e. baseball players, football players, specifically quarterbacks, track and field, tennis, etc. Anything that involves excessive shoulder movement is going to inevitably lead to some overuse injuries. We definitely don't need to add to this by the posture that we sit in on a daily basis or stand in, or even the fact that when we train in the weight room, we only use our mirror muscles. All of these things lead to a lot of anterior rotation, and we need to work on avoiding it overall. Not just our athletes, but our day-to-day gym goers, and even our more sedentary population. So some things to look at, especially moving forward with our athletes, is kind of their just overall day-to-day standing posture, even when we're just talking to them. We could greatly prevent a lot of injuries just by acknowledging the way that people stand and offering ideas on how to fix it. So ways to improve some shoulder health, like I just said, improve some posture, or improve your posture, strengthen your shoulder stabilizers, and then place a lot more emphasis on those posterior muscles. You'd be amazed that if you do a lot more pulling and pushing, how much our posture will improve and how much healthier our shoulder can be. And any questions, type them in the forum. Thanks.